you. I'm Gail, and she's Loretta.
And I'm Loretta.
Most of you probably already knew that. So we don't want to be so far away from you. I hope that's okay. We've decided we're just going to come hang out where you are because clearly you're not moving to the front. That's not what you want to do. So we want you to be where you want to be and where you're comfortable. All you people at the cold table back there, you're at the cold table, the thing's blowing on you, right? You're at the cold table? Well, feel free to move if it gets too bad. Hi, Patrick. Great to see you this morning. So welcome, everyone. We have a few minutes to spend with you, and we're excited to do that. Our first slide, which we have a colleague who's going to move our slides for us. We appreciate that. Our first slide is just to remind you of who we are, and if you need to reach out to either one of us after this session, you're welcome to do that. I'm hoping I'll hear from some of you in the future related to, hey, I want to know more about that. And if you do, we'll be happy to work with you on that. So why are we here? Culture transformation, which is our topic today, it's about employee engagement, which is a well overused term, as we all know. But culture transformation, we needed at University of Mississippi. I was consulting there, and within the first 90 days, I'd say, it was pretty apparent we had a culture of indifference and somewhat to the level of disinterest. Both of those things are rather dangerous. You may have this in your culture and not know it. It kind of runs through all cultures, but it just depends on how obvious is it, whether you do something about it or not. You're always going to have a few people who are indifferent or disinterested, but you want the majority of your workforce to be enthusiastic and accountable for their work. So you can't do the kind of culture transformation that we did at the University of Mississippi in the revenue cycle. It was not the entire organization, obviously. It was about 462 people involved in the revenue cycle there, at least under the leadership in the way it is established there, patient access, HIM coding, and it's the physician revenue cycle and the hospital revenue cycle. So we held hands with HR, because you can't, first of all, it's a state institution. So if you're going to do anything that messes with a state institution, you need to be pretty careful about that. And we did a major reorganization of 462 revenue cycle employees over 5 months with COVID. just wanted to throw that in there with COVID going on. Now, it can be a little painful when you say to people, we're going to eliminate 459 jobs. Because what that sounds like to the employee is, oh, I'm going to reapply for my job. I guess if that lady wants to do that, that's okay with me. I was very careful to explain to people, you are not reapplying for anything. The old jobs are gone, and the new jobs are being posted. And you will be interviewing at every level and being selected for your position. We did the directors first. Loretta is a director in our organization of training and revenue cycle training and development. And there were 3 people excluded from this reorganization. Obviously, I excluded myself. I wasn't going to do that. And then Loretta was one of the people who was excluded, and another the patient access director, because they had been in their positions for about 90 days, and it didn't make sense. They had already been carefully selected for those roles. So then the jobs they were first posted internally, and then we went public with them. And we did managers and supervisors. We went through the organization down to the individual contributors. It was amazing. They were given classes in how to interview. Some of these people had been in jobs in the revenue cycle for many years. It offended, I'll admit it offended some people to have to apply for a position when their perception was they already had the job. They were doing it before. So I've done a couple of these major reorganizations before. They are a bit painful. You do have to hold hands with HR. But ultimately, you have the workforce that you really want to have in the organization. There are some people who opted out. That's fine too. We really did not have a huge loss of internal employees, but some people didn't get the jobs that they thought they should have, or were familiar with having done when they were already employees in the revenue cycle. So we knew that we needed to do this major reorganization. We did it. It happened over, about 8 months with COVID. COVID kind of put us in a slowdown because you couldn't get people to come in and interview. So we were doing a lot of WebEx interviewing and things of that sort. But we knew that we couldn't get to this culture of accountability and enthusiasm, because I do think it's important to be enthusiastic about your work. We couldn't do that if we didn't do this reorganization. Someone had to seriously, a lot of people had to take very seriously the idea that I'm really going to be expected to perform here. And I'm not saying that prior leadership had not expected people to perform, but the metrics certainly indicated that they had not. And just sort of the general malaise that was hanging over the revenue cycle. So then we did something that we perceived as a bit of a reward. We had an outside consultant come in and work with Loretta, primarily driven by her. But we decided that we needed a specialized approach. How many of you have been in organizations, show of hands, or shout out, whatever you want to do. How many of you have been in organizations, they bring in a program that's going to get everybody engaged, and everybody's going to be enthusiastic, and it's all going to be better after that. I've been studerized 3 times in my career, so I know what I'm talking about here. Okay? So if it's Studer, who's great, by the way, that was not a criticism, doesn't matter what the program is, there's this perception that we can overlay something over an entire organization and create the kind of accountability and engagement that we want. I happen to believe the revenue cycle is unique, just as nursing is unique, as other areas, technical areas in a hospital, obviously providers. There are unique aspects, unique subcultures in every health system, and not everything, every program can fit every single aspect of that organization. And I happen to believe revenue cycle people are pretty special, obviously. I think we get a lot of people in our workforce who have not necessarily a secondary education. They may or they may not. They may be from some of the more depressed, if you will, socioeconomic status. There's just a lot of things going on in the workforce. We're competing with McDonald's most of the time on individual contributor labor force, organizations that may have a lot less stress and pay more money than we do. So it was very important in our situation for us to recognize we're not trying to drive accountability and enthusiasm at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. We're trying to drive accountability and enthusiasm in the revenue cycle there. And so we took a very, for lack of a better term, that became a more personalized approach to what we were going to do. So you can see, I thank you for following me on my slides without me telling you to. I appreciate that. So here's the next one. So we had to talk a lot about, and Loretta's going to tell you about the program we did. I'm doing just kind of the introductory stuff here. We had to talk about what is customer satisfaction, because in the healthcare system, you know as well as I do, a lot of that has been defined by, are we nice? Are we polite? Do we walk people from here to there? You know, what do we do? What I believe and based my strategy on was that real customer service, exceptional customer service is, I don't have to ever talk to you again. I came in, I got my service, you got my information right, you billed my claim, my insurance page, you sent me a statement, I agreed because it looked just like my EOB that I got from my insurance company, that's what I owe, I paid it, and we're done. That is real customer satisfaction. Everything was done, and I didn't have to speak to you again. Why do we have customer service units in the revenue cycle? We get a lot of inquiries, right? So I really wanted to make sure that our staff understood that customer service includes being nice, cordial, using proper grammar, having a good sound. You don't have to deliver a word-for-word script, but a good script in your head to know how to speak to people and answer their questions and all of that stuff. But we really wanted to emphasize that not having to speak to them again is the real goal. How we treat people when they do call us or come in to see us is critical, but a real satisfactory experience requires no further interaction. And it's also important to remember, how many times do you hear customer service people say, well, what you need to do is, well, you're going to have to. Well, we need you to do. And I'm like, no, we work for them. They don't work for us. You need to understand, you're giving assignments and homework to your customer. Now, these things may need to be done, but how you encourage your customer to do these things that you are telling them they have to do, which, by the way, they don't. They're individuals. If they chose not to do something, they might still owe the bill. But when you think about it, we can't order them around. So how you encourage people to do the things that you need to do is very important. So there's a lot of scripting involved in how we speak to customers when we do need to interact with them. They don't work for us, we work for them. So switching slides. How does accountability workforce pay off? You can read these benefits. I don't need to read them to you, but I can assure you every one of them is true. If you can inspire, I'm going to admit something else. I don't believe you can motivate anybody. It's just a premise. I don't believe it. I believe motivation comes from inside you. It's your thing. You own it. You figure out what it is. Inspiration is an entirely different matter. If I can't inspire a workforce, I've got no business leading them, right? So inspiration is what we want to focus on, and you can't get accountability with the workforce if you cannot inspire them to care about the things that the organization needs them to care about. And if you can find out what motivates a person, you can certainly use it to your advantage. There's nothing wrong with using the things that motivate people to, on an individual basis, learning what those are and using them to, as a part of your inspiration or as a way to encourage them to do the things you need them to do. So next slide. Fundamental requirements for post-reorganization. I'm going to let Loretta, you start with that one, right?
Okay. Yep.
So, no, I'm going to finish this one, and then we're going to move into Loretta. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you.
Yep.
So the fundamental requirements post-reorganization are to live the promise. She's going to talk to you about what the promise is. But I said we gave a reward after the reorganization. What that reward was we're going to invest a lot of time, money, and effort into helping our workforce understand what accountability looks like, how they deliver it, and what the payoff for them is going to be. And Loretta's going to talk to you about how we did that. My 3 things I asked of the leadership team after the reorganization and when we finished this work that Loretta's going to go over with you, manage performance. One of the biggest problems when I got to UMC was it was perfectly clear nobody was managing performance. Everybody's performance evaluation was perfect. And perfect performance evaluations, and excuse me, but I'm going to disclose this, not a raise for that workforce in 3 years. But perfect evaluations for everyone. How inspired would you be? You know? So it was very clear to me how it had become the way it was. But even if we can't give money, we should know how to give encouragement and inspire people to be very committed to their work. And that's by managing their performance, which includes managing them out if they're not effective and can't do the work. You're not helping anybody. In fact, you're harming your other good performing employees if you leave poor performers in the workforce. all they're doing is wondering why that person's still there, sitting next to them when they're doing all the work, and that person seems to be doing just fine not doing it. So it's very important. And then results. We want to pursue best practice, manage performance, get results, communicate, and when you're through communicating, communicate some more. So I'm going to turn it over to Loretta now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. I'm going to tone my voice down. I am a trainer, so I am used to being in the crowd and talking really loud. So I'm going to try to tone it down and not hold this mic so close so I don't blow you guys out. But yeah, I want to first talk about, if you'll move to slide 9, please. I want to first talk about this, recognizing this indifference that Gail was talking about. This was something that was really prevalent within our organization, as hard as that is for me to admit. We definitely saw that, and we saw that across many different areas. We're revenue cycle. We schedule patients. We're front-facing, where we're registering our patients, and we are customer service. We're on the phone with our patients. We are billing. We are follow-up. We are coding. We are doing all of these different jobs, and in almost every single area, we could see that there was just this level of indifference. And you know, when we really took a step back to see, you know, what caused this, what is this stemming from, the level of indifference was really more about kind of a passivity, if you will, where we noticed that our employees they just came in and they showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning and they started doing their job, and what they thought was their job and what they thought what they were doing was really the right thing. And it was because there was really this lack of alignment of goals. So if you'll kind of flip over to the next one, what we very quickly realized is that, you know, those individual goals that they had just were not aligned with every department's goals, and every one of our areas had different goals. And that's just how it should be. That's how this works, right? That's how we work together in revenue cycle, is every department should have their goals. Those goals were not aligned with the individual's goals, and they certainly were not aligned with UMC's goals as a whole, as a hospital. I will go ahead and confess, I have a background in clinical therapy, so as a mental health counselor. So that human factor was really intriguing to me, how we had people that were coming in and they really were showing up. They really wanted to do their job right. They wanted to do the right thing, but not really knowing what that was. What does that look like? How do we get there? And out of that, and I know Gail's talked about this, was this revenue cycle promise was born, because we didn't have this. This is kind of like a mission statement, if you will, within revenue cycle. And so you can read it on the screen. UMMC revenue cycle promises to be a sincere and responsive partner to all other areas of UMMC. Our customers are not just our patients. Our customers are physicians. Our customers are other departments. Our customers are other department leaders. Our customers are all over, and our coworkers. And so that's kind of the approach that we wanted to take. It's not just about, when you hear customer service, you're thinking patient-facing, on the phone with the patients. We went way beyond that, because we had to take a look at, our coders may never, they may talk to providers, but you know, they may go about their day and have very little interaction, but they are still producing. They're still a product, and that product, like Gail said, that's what we're wanting to get to. We want a one and done situation, and every department had to really kind of take a step back and look at, how do we get to that point with our work. And
I just want to mention, the promise is at the close of every email of every revenue cycle employee at UMC. This is how every email ends, with the promise.
And when you know that that's in your email signature line, it really makes you take notice. And that was something that I think a lot of people, and I'll confess myself, had a little bit of apprehension about, because I thought, now, am I going to be able to hold this promise? And I think that's what our goal is. We're wanting people to stop and take a look at that and think, how can I really be a part of this and really deliver on that promise? Now, when we created this accountability playbook, it's one thing to have a promise, and I love that, and that's something that we can stand behind. But you've got to tell people how to get there, and that's the second piece of this. That's that action imperative. That's the piece that we really we taught, we discussed. We had a lot of activities around that, because that's how do we get there. And it's on the screen for you to read. UMC revenue cycle will fulfill its promise by aligning goals. That was huge. That was our first step. Focusing on delivering best practice results through effective communication demonstrated by listening, discussing, and responding in a thoughtful, collaborative, and accurate manner. These are all action pieces. This is how do we get there. And it's one thing to just put this on a board and people go, oh, okay, yeah. Well, then how do you do that? And so that's where, not to get too granular, but that's where we started really digging and showing them behaviorally, what does this look like? How are we going to live that promise? If we live the promise, then we're going to see some great results. So we started with our leaders. Our leaders, are they setting those expectations for their team? We had new leaders as a result of the reorg, and so this was just a prime opportunity, perfect timing for us to come in and just show them how to lead, not just manage, because we wanted to, we really, in all of our training, we got away from that term manager and taught them how to lead, how to be a good leader, or using active listening. And that is really a skill that you have to practice. It's something that you think you're an active listener, and we all are active listeners, I think, at some time, but nobody can be perfect at that. And so it's just something that we have to continuously work on. So we showed them what that looks like. We shared some skills with them that are going to help to really just grow and enhance in that area of being an active listener, listening to their team. Their team's in the trenches, y'all. I mean, I've since 16, I've been doing this in some way or another. I've been in healthcare. And so having moved through different roles and different positions, like a lot of you probably in this room have, you really realize you have to be there. You have to see what everybody really goes through and experiences on a day-to-day level. So listening to them and listening to their team was so super important. It was such a critical part. And then giving those team members that opportunity to express their concerns and express their needs. Hey, look, they had some great ideas, but what we found is that they weren't always listened to. They weren't always received in the manner that they were intended. Now, not everybody has the best idea. We know that, right? But we do need to be open and be receptive. So that's one of the things that we really push with our leaders is, hey, you need to be open to some ideas that others might have, and give them feedback, really lead them through, and guide them through what changes you want to see within the department. And then we moved on to individual contributors. Individual contributors, by the way, we trained about 435 people through this program. And we started with them recognizing that they could own their influence and what that means. And a lot of people start hearing that and they're like, oh man, she's bringing out her psychology background. But you really have to dig down and help them to see that, it doesn't matter that you are an hourly employee and that you might be able to make more at McDonald's, but let's talk about how you can grow with us. And that started with them empowering them and leading without authority, because they are in positions where they thought, I have no authority, I have no say. And what we showed them is, oh, yes, you do. You have a lot of say. Every action you take is really a step towards, leading and having that authority. You might not be in that position just yet, and if you want to get there, we're going to help you. We're going to show you how to get there. But so anyway, that was so critical, and so many people, we got some great feedback on that one because we had so many people go, wow, I've never had anybody to put it that way, that I didn't realize that I could be a leader, even in what I do. And what they don't realize is that even our patients look to them as a leader. When you step up to that front desk to register, that person's in a position of authority. Regardless of their title, they're in a position of authority because they're gonna make sure your registration's correct. And like Gail said, it all starts at the very beginning. When you're on the phone scheduling, hey, that's where our revenue cycle starts. That's where we're putting a lot of effort right now in our training is front end. Get the insurance right, get all of that done correctly on the front end. That is a position of authority, whether they see it that way or not. And again, behaviorally, we spent a lot of time breaking down that promise. What does it look like to be sincere? I mean, a lot of people, you have to really stop and think about that, right? What does sincerity look like? What does it mean to be responsive? And I had people really taking that quite literally. Loretta, what do you mean? Do you want me to respond within 24 hours? Is that what you consider responsive? And, and again, it kind of varies within each area and each job role. So we spent a lot of time really breaking that promise down and behaviorally, what does all of that look like?
They did a lot of role playing.
A lot of role play.
A lot of role play.
Yeah, and there were a lot, all of the introverts in the room were like, oh my gosh, no, she's not going to do that. But I'm perfectly aware that in every organization, we have a lot of introverts that are at our front desk. We have a lot of introverts that are answering our phones. You don't, when you're interviewing people, you don't say, hey, how extroverted are you? Do you like talking to people? Are you going to enjoy this? With the labor shortage, we're working on getting people where they need to be. We are hiring people with no healthcare background in some of our roles.
At least they can be taught.
But they're there and they're eager to learn, and so that's what we're doing. We're teaching them. We're teaching them from the ground up, and we're showing them what this kind of behavior looks like. Preparing for success, there's a lot that went into getting ready for this. And we really started late fall of last year really getting prepared for this. First and foremost, what are we trying to do here? What are our goals? And so we started talking with the different leaders across revenue cycle to see what are your KPIs? Where are they? Where do you want them to be? How can our program get you there? And our program is just empowering and growing that workforce. Meeting space, obviously, and these are some just
lots of logistics.
Lots and lots of logistics. And we did this thinking at the time, we're at the end of COVID. I don't know if y'all remember November of last year, we're thinking, well, we're maybe getting a little bit closer to being in person. We weren't. And we really had to take a step back and take a really different approach. And so we had to consider, are we going to be able to do this all virtually, some in person, some virtual. So there was really a lot of logistics that went into this. Time commitment is another huge factor. We all have employees that we need on the front lines, right? You need your coders coding. You don't need them spending quite so much time in class. Registration staff, we needed them in those seats. We needed our schedulers in their seats on the phone. And so we had to be very cognizant and build a program that would give them maximum retention time, if you will. So long enough to get them engaged, and then, but not so much time that it took them away from their roles. So we were very precise with our timing on these sessions. And then, of course, your equipment, your software, you're going to want some type of, we use Qualtrics, some type of survey so that you can track your progress and get that feedback from your attendees to make sure that everything is being helpful to them in a lot of ways and relevant information. Our training platforms, again, we started this with the idea that we were going to be able to bring groups into rooms. In some ways we were able to, and in some areas where we had smaller kind of smaller department areas, if you will. But for the most part, we had to do this virtually, or some combination of virtual and in person. And you know, when we start talking about virtual, you all know if you've done any type of virtual training, it's best not to have one person talking the entire time, because that gets really boring. I don't care how clever that person may be. They're gonna, in about 20 minutes, people are gonna start tuning them out, right? So you need that, maybe having a co-presenter. Yes, sir?
No, go ahead, finish your thought.
Okay. So you need that co-presenter, somebody to keep that dynamic going. Our sessions lasted for about 45 minutes. So there was a lot of back and forth, as you'll see with the panels. Most of the time you're going to have a couple of people. We also chose to have a moderator. And so we had 3 people. We had 2 presenters, and then we had a moderator. And she really watched, because we utilized chat, polling questions. When you go virtual, if you've done a lot of training virtual, you know people can tune you out really easy. And we heard people, honestly, on some of our training, you know, they had things going in the background. And so, especially when you have people working from home, you might hear you know, a kid screaming, or I want juice, or whatever. So, right, so you have to account for all of that. So our moderator really helped with that. She also was somebody that had been in the organization for several years. She knew a lot of the people, as I did, that were on that, you know, in that meeting. So she could call out to people that she knew would feel comfortable kind of giving us some input. So that was obviously really helpful. Did you want to add something?
How was this program kind of help to bridge the gap between some of the other departments in the hospital that the revenue cycle depends on to get done what needs to get done, whether it be IT or whatever? Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually have some great feedback. We've gotten actually some responses from other departments. And Gail was not aware that I was doing this. And I told her this after the fact.
I don't need to know everything.
But what I did was I wanted to measure, you know, what are we seeing? Are we seeing some compliments coming from other departments? Have we seen an increase in compliments? And, you know, compliments can be kind of hard to get, right? And revenue cycle, because everybody's like, revenue cycle, they're not doing this right. And so I kind of secretively, without anybody knowing, and Gail was not aware, I track those. I track those comments. What are we hearing from other departments? What are we hearing from leaders in those departments? Great results, great results. We were seeing really some compliments coming in that we have never had from some of our other leaders.
And some of that stuff comes out of the Office of Patient Experience, and those are the ones you really value,
Right.
Because someone has actually gone in to that system or called that office to compliment someone by name or whatever. Of course, we always pass all compliments along to the person who received it. Recognitions are something that happen every day in writing among our workforce.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you'll switch over to slide 17, I want to.
They did know what was going on. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They did know, Bill, just so
Yeah.
you'll know. They all knew this was underway. All the other aspects that they knew about the reorganization, everybody's like, oh boy, let her go first. And it was fine. But everybody else in the organization kind of knew the transformation we were trying to go through.
Yeah, and it was not something that we announced and said, oh, our accountability-driven customer care program, we're done with that. Let us know your thoughts. We did not do that. It was all, like Gail said, relying on our Office of Patient Experience and then just that feedback we got from those departments. So our in-person training, we tried to do some small groups. We were really limited on what we could do and the number of people that we could get into a room. And so we utilized kind of a hybrid, if you will, at times of having some people there in the room with us, some people virtual. But out of all of that, and Gail's already told you we use role-playing a lot, I was very much aware, like I said, that we have introverts in the room. That we have people that are on our WebExes. You've probably seen them, they never say a word. They're there, you see them in the participant panel, but they never say a word, and that's okay. But what we wanted to do, that's why we really virtually utilize chats and polls, because people are a lot more apt to answer those. But even in person, when we're doing our in-person training, and I know we have one manager and a leader that she herself is quite the introvert. She's not one to kind of get up and publicly speak. And we have heard such great things from her director on how much she has grown through this training and how much more comfortable she feels really getting in front of even her small groups and huddles. So we're definitely seeing some growth there.
Loretta just mentioned huddles. We have stacked huddles, just so you know what we're talking about. Every morning, Monday through Thursday, 15 minutes, 3 levels. So everything has an opportunity to get escalated to the director level if necessary. Patrick's smiling at me. He knows all about stacked huddles. And it's a great way to ensure communication on a daily basis, up and down the ladder.
Yes. So in those huddles, a lot of sharing happens, right? So, and that's another thing that we've seen. We've seen such a really an explosion of ideas that are being shared in those huddles. So that's been really a great result. The convergence. So when I talk about convergence, I'm talking about these two sides kind of coming together. We don't know what Gail, like Gail mentioned, we don't know what motivates a person, an individual. We know that we can help to inspire them. We can give them tools. We can give them training. If there's somewhere they want to go, we can certainly help them get there. But we had to take a look at individually, what are they wanting? Where are they wanting to go with this? Are they wanting just an 8-to-5 job? And y'all, sometimes people do. I'm just going to be honest. Sometimes people want to just come in, do their job, and go home because they've got a lot of other stuff they're having to deal with, right, at home. So we recognize that. And with this training, we realize that, hey, we've just got this is what they want to do. They want to come in, they want to do the job right. And so that's where our goals are going to come in as team leaders and as an organization to say, okay, I understand this is what you want to do, but here's where we're trying to get, and let's meet there and make sure that we are producing and meeting those goals that we've set as an organization. And we've definitely seen the results when we look at monitoring accountability, utilizing, again, the surveys and listening to the feedback that we're getting from leaders all across the organization, the feedback that we're getting from just from coworkers, and the feedback that we got from the participants themselves. Because, you know, when you put something like this out, a lot of people look at it and go, oh, that's accountability stuff. You know, it's, like you said, it's kind of maybe overused. And,
this again.
This again. You know, do we really have to go through this? But we just got some great responses from our staff, because what we try to do is give a really unique spin and not just tell them about accountability, but show them what that looks like. That was the key. That was the key that made them go, yeah, maybe, I think I can do better with this. I think I can do a little bit better than what I've been doing. How the program was perceived by team members was very critical for us. I always ask on every survey, do you feel like this was time well spent? And y'all, if I saw that it was not, then that to me was an indication that, hey, we're on the wrong track here, because I needed every individual contributor to feel like that the time they spent in these 45-minute sessions was worth it, and that they were going to see growth out of this, because we know how to register patients as leaders. We know how to register patients. We know how to code. We know how to do a lot of things, but we're not doing it. We're leading the group that is, right? And so we need that group to really fully buy into this. We established an employee engagement program. As Gail said, that, you know, we're a state hospital, so we don't have all of the, you can't give gift cards and you can't give
no incentive programs.
Incentives and monetary incentives. So we had to be really careful with that. And so out of this program, we created an employee engagement program that has different facets to it. And just off to a wonderful start. We're getting so much great response from that as well. So I'm not going to bore you with that. You guys probably all have a lot of information on that already. I want to get, before our time runs out, to measuring this program, because out of all of this and everything that we did, if we didn't see results, then you know, we would have been on the wrong track this whole time. But we did see results. We saw a 38.7% increase in customer service performance recognition. So that was a pretty big leap for us. Our call abandonment rate, and these are some individual KPIs, by the way, across different departments. Call abandonment rate, less than 1% for our customer service team. Never. We have never been there. Y'all may be there.
That's down from over 12.
We have never been there. Reduce turnaround time to patient billing inquiries to less than 24 hours. So that's both, any inquiries that come in over the phone and through my chart. Reduction in registration-related complaints to the Office of Patient Experience, another, a partner with us. And then those productivity and collection goals established. This is the one that makes Gail smile. So on the next slide, Gail gets really happy when she sees this.
I love money.
She loves money, because let's talk about the money factor here. Trending 13% above revenue goals through this collaborative effort. And 13% equates, I'm going to go ahead and say it, can I say? So 26 million above goal. So 26 million above goal just in the 6 months that we've been tracking this. So that's huge, y'all. 26 million is huge.
We recognize that being over goal like that cannot be solely attributed to this program.
Right.
Please don't think that we think that. But what we can tell you is it's had an impact. You have to also, when you're improving workflows at the same time you're doing all of this, then again, you've got alignment. I care more. Now I'm going to work on improving this, and somebody wants to hear what I have to say as a way to improve it. The employees, I listened to the prior presentation, and they were talking about fee schedules, making sure they're timely, that kind of stuff, which is important. If you want to know if you're being paid correctly, ask somebody who posts the cash. They'll tell you, do you know we're getting the same amount of money we billed? Uh-oh, something's wrong. We need to check a fee schedule. You need to talk to the people who are doing the daily work. That's where the ideas really are. Granted, you can't adopt everything, but you can usually find a little gem in there somewhere. We also, during the reorganization, we found some seriously talented people who were buried in our workforce, and their little light was under a bushel. And so we were very happy to uncover that, take that bushel away, and put them in positions where they could exercise their skills. Thank you.
Thank you. The last slide, we have some compliments. These are just two of the many, many, many compliments that we've received. And to be quite honest, we did have some attendees that came through, some of our individual contributors that came through, and some of the feedback they gave us, and it was very minimal, was, some of this stuff I've heard before, but it was a different spin. And so they are saying, yeah, I've heard this. So it's one thing to hear some of these concepts that we talk about, but it's another thing to really put it in action. And that's what this did. This program gave us that opportunity to really put these words and these phrases that we're using, this promise that we're making, well, you better stand behind it. So here's how we're going to do that. So we had to show them behaviorally how this works. That's what this program was all about, was developing that program of behavior.
We don't mean to rush, but we are trying to stay on time. We know it's Friday and the last day of the conference, and we have another important speaker to listen to. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them at this time. Yes.
So I do work for Patrick, so I am familiar with the huddles. We love them, but we've had a lot of turnover due to COVID. We had a ransomware attack, and just a lot of stuff has been going on. And we're really trying to get back into regular huddles again. And no one really is bringing forth things that we know are probably going on. So I started sitting with the individuals, and as I'm sitting with them for 15 minutes, I'm trying to do rounding with everyone. They'll bring up issues, and I'll say, well, why aren't you bringing those up at huddle so we can try to address those? And they say they don't want to say anything in front of other people. Or immediately after huddle's over, they will come to my office with an issue. How can I get those people engaged to bring that up as the group? Because if they're seeing it, others are seeing it.
Right, exactly. And so being an introvert myself, which you would not know that based off of what I do, but I'm a lot of people, we use the word introvert, but they are really just kind of a quiet, they don't want to bring things out in the open for fear that they may be judged based on their question or their idea. So one of the things that we implemented was a troubleshoot form. And this troubleshoot form we put in our teams, on our team site, so that anybody that saw any issue, any employee could bring that forward by completing what we call the troubleshoot form. And this form was pre-populated with some questions, but also left some space for them to just free text, what are you seeing? It's amazing the things, like Gail said, that our individual contributors are seeing on a daily basis, and they don't say anything because they don't know that they have a voice to say anything. So if you had that team member that's just kind of that quieter person that's like, I don't know if I should say this out loud, I don't want to get anybody else in trouble, troubleshoot form, that was the way to go. We've had great success with that so far.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to share that with you if you would want it. Just let us know how to get it to you. I think also with the COVID and the work from home thing, and some organizations have not brought their workforces back. We've been fortunate our workforce has come back. We had a little spate of COVID exposure in the first 2 or 3 weeks. It went away, and now we don't even have a problem with it anymore. Everybody's vaccinated because it was mandated. But aside from that, you do have huddle boards, right? You have the boards. So you have to remind folks almost every day, remember the huddle board belongs to you. And if you're doing a virtual huddle board, okay, cool. So you have to remind them, you don't have to put your name next to it, but if you've got something, write it on the board. It'll come up in the conversation, and the person leading the huddle then takes accountability for bringing up the issue. I see we have something about United Healthcare denials on our board this morning. Doesn't matter who put it up there, what's going on. That person is much more likely to speak up because you introduced, as the leader of the huddle, you introduced the idea versus kind of them having to speak up. Then they'll feel more invited and welcome to speak up. That's the technique that we have used. Because we can run into that even at manager and leader huddle. Everybody's just sort of glazed over for the morning.
And
and I'll say, okay, you people, we got no workflow issues. This is not possible.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like,
because I lead the top
empty.
huddle.
Yeah, this can't be empty.
The director huddle is with me and all of my direct reports. And if they don't have a workflow issue, something's not right. Because we got them all the time. So, and if you don't know how to set up a huddle board or you've never done this before, Patrick, I'm sure, would be happy to help out. We're happy to discuss that process with you. But the number one thing, when I do town halls, when I first go do an engagement, I hold town halls and I ask for questions. And I make sure when I hold a town hall, I've reviewed all of those and I have answers for them or some kind of commentary. And I read them out. I got 5 questions about, and I give the topic. I got 8 questions about, and I respond to that. This is how you first and most quickly, forget COVID for a minute, this is how I first and most quickly find out what I need to address immediately in an organization. What is it always? I never know what's going on, is what people start telling you. So you have to figure out a way, and I've never seen a reason not to implement stacked huddles. It's usually one of the first things that happens. I think we had them up in 6 to 8 weeks. The boards were up.
Yeah.
If you don't have them. Hey, it's not a whole lot different than nursing reports. Everybody remember old nursing report? That works. Well, it works in revenue cycle too. So we don't want to take up anybody else's time, but please feel free to, you've got our contact information, reach out to either one of us. I want to thank Loretta for traveling from Mississippi to do this with me this morning.
And thank y'all for inviting a Mississippi girl and making her feel at home. So my accent here is not so bad, right? Right.
No,
the
your
taxi driver on the
fine.
way here, she was like, "You're from around here?" I'm like, "Well, a little down the road, Mississippi."
So thank you. Thank you very much
y'all.
for your time and attention.